السلام عليكم. أهلا وسهلا بكم أبنائي طلاب الفرقة السابعة بالمجمع التكنولوجي المتكامل بالأميرية في كورس اللغة الإنجليزية. Welcome all my dear students of the 7th year الأميرية ITEC in our 4th week session. Today, inshallah, we are going to speak about what we call travel tips. Well, travel tips means that these are some guidelines that you should have into consideration while traveling, while visiting other countries and foreign places. But let's first begin with having this warm-up question. Have you ever had problems while traveling? For example, losing money, losing airline tickets, finding too expensive hotel rooms, etc.? I want you to think deeply about this question, try to answer it for yourself, and try to practice your language speaking about these different situations that you may be indulged in while traveling. For example, have you ever lost money while traveling? What would you do in such a case? Have you ever lost your airline tickets? Have you ever found hotel rooms about too expensive to the degree that you can't afford them? Try to think of these questions loudly and try to speak about your behavior in each of these situations, okay? Now let's shift to something related. Today we are speaking about tourist travel tips. Tourist is someone specialized in giving travel tips for tourists and travelers all over the world. Okay, she is a traveler expert. She is a travel expert. Sorry. Travel expert means that she is someone specialized in giving tips and guidelines and advice to people who travel a lot, to tourists, on situations and experiences that they may find themselves in and do not know exactly what to do in such a situation. Okay, so our travel expert, tourist tripper, responds to some troubled travelers. The word troubled here means that these travelers find themselves in embarrassing situations that cause them some troubles. Okay, for example, let's have the first problem of one of the different travelers. A woman fell down in front of us during our sightseeing tour. While we were helping her, someone stole our money. If we hadn't been so nice, we would still have our cash. Okay, so this man or this woman complained that while they were trying to help a woman who fell down in front of them while they were sightseeing in a sightseeing tour, somebody came and stole their money. Now he or she regrets being held for this woman. He or she supposes that if they hadn't helped this woman, their money wouldn't have been stolen. Okay, let's listen to Terry and check her advice. Terry says, "I'm not nearly as nice as you." This means that Terry would be more cautious than this. She would have in mind, for example, that this may be a trick or something that's not real in order to plot the stealing of money of them. So Terry says, "I'm not nearly as nice as you." If there is a commotion, commotion means a situation that has much ado, that has much noise, or some people, for example, are rushing, some people are falling down, a lot of noise, and so on. So you may, for example, be curious to watch, to see what is happening, to provide help, or something like that. So she says, if there is a commotion, I hold on to my wallet. This means I stick to it. I pay attention to it. I take care of it. And remember, sometimes the person creating the commotion itself is working together with the thief. This means that it's a kind of intrigue, it's a kind of plot, okay? They are plotting together in order to get the money of the traveler or the tourist in such a case. Okay. Do you have another piece of advice? Try to be in tourist shoes and try to suggest some other advices that you may provide for the tourist in such a case. Let's check another problem. Okay, somebody writes, I want to share a tip my friend gave me. So this person now is sharing, is participating with story. A piece of advice that his friend gave to him. It says, if you're worried about losing your passport, do not carry it around with you. Just keep it in your hotel room. Okay, so instead of having, for example, your passport in your pocket all the time and roaming with it, rather leave it in your hotel room so that you will not lose it. Terry says, sorry, your friend was wrong. Why? What's your point of view? Let's check. Keep your passport with you at all times. If someone had broken into your room, this means that a burglar, for example, or somebody tried to rob your room, you would probably still be trying to get home. Home here means the homeland. You will not be able to go back to your country, to your homeland. Okay? So try to have your passport all the time with you. A third problem or a third situation that the sender wants terrorist advice net. Hell, I didn't arrange anything in advance. And now I'm in London in high season and the only hotel rooms we can find are way too expensive. This means that this person hasn't arranged before what to do, and when he arrived at London, he found that most hotel rooms are so expensive and he can't afford them. So he is asking for Terry's help. Terry says, try a travel website, and in the future, plan before you go. This is a very important thing that you should have in mind. Try to plan before you go to any place. Try to have in mind what may happen, okay, in order not to find yourself in an embarrassing situation or something of the sort, okay? If you had done some research at home, you wouldn't be having such a bad vacation now, okay? These were some of the problems, some of the situations, some of the experiences of different tourists and the travelers that they asked Terry for their advice, for her advice on them, okay? Now, what travel questions would you ask Terry? Try to remember yourself some of the situations, some of the experiences you found yourself in while traveling before, and try to ask, or even some situations that you may find yourself in the future, and try to ask Terry's tips on them. The second question is that you will imagine that you are in Terry's shoes, and what advice would you give for each situation? Let's have some example. The first example, somebody says, or you may, for example, ask or send a situation like that and ask Terry's advice on it. I want to buy souvenirs from the places I'm going to visit, but I also like to travel light. Light means that I should not be so heavy. Okay, so for example, I can move easily from place to place without carrying so much luggage and baggage and so on. Should I store them? Them here means this is souvenirs. Should I store them at the airport or somewhere else? Now, imagine you are in Terry's shoes. In Terry's shoes means that in her place. Imagine that you are in her place. What pieces of advice would you direct to this person in such a situation? Let's check. You may, for example, say, the best thing would be to mail them home. The best thing is not to carry them with you all the time and all over the places you go and visit, but rather to mail them in the nearest possible chance home. How? If you don't mind waiting, use surface mail or sea mail. It's cheaper, okay? It will not cost you so much money, Okay, now again, try to think of different questions that you would like to ask Tori, and then try to exchange roles and be in Tori's shoes and try to direct pieces of advice and some tips for the asker about the situation he is asking you. Okay, listening. Okay, now you're going to listen to Cindy and Scott talking about their travel problems. Cindy and Scott traveled and they met some problems. What happened to each person? What happened to Cindy and what happened to Scott? Now I leave you with
Unit
the
12,
listening part.
Lesson
You are
B,
going to listen with
page
this question in
100.
mind. What
2.
problems did
Things
Cindy
went wrong.
face and what
A.
problems
Listen to
did
Cindy and
Scott
Scott
meet?
talking about their travel
Ready?
problems.
Now
What
listen
happened to
and
each
take notes,
person?
please.
1. Cindy.
You'll probably be surprised to hear what I did. I was on a business trip. The flight was a long one, and when I arrived at my destination, I was eager to get my bags and get to my hotel to relax. Well, you know, they always tell you to be careful to get the right bag, but I was in a hurry. You can guess what happened. My black suitcase looked just like every other one, so I picked up someone else's. I didn't realize my mistake until I got to the hotel. Well, I immediately called the airport, and fortunately, it all worked out. I had to go back to the airport, though, to pick up my suitcase and return the other one. And of course, I also had to apologize. If only I'd checked the name tag more carefully. It's funny. This sort of thing almost never happens to me when I travel.
2. Scott.
This is kind of a funny story. I was in Panama City and had a layover between flights. I'd arrived at about 6 p.m., and my flight out wasn't until about 8:30. Well, my flight was delayed. And delayed. It got really crowded at the departure gate. I was getting tired, and there were so many people around. I hate crowds. So I went to sit away from the departure gate to escape the crowds. I was reading my newspaper and feeling drowsy. I wish I'd slept on the flight to Panama. Anyway, the next thing I know, I wake up and there's no one around. The crowd is gone. I'd fallen asleep and missed my flight. They must have made lots of announcements and I missed them all. Boy, did I feel stupid. I had to stay in Panama City overnight and catch a flight out the next morning.
Let's check the answers. These are the answers. Number 1, Cindy was in a business trip. She had been on a long flight and was very tired. When she arrived, she mistakenly picked up someone else's suitcase and took it to her hotel. When she realized what she had done, she went back to the airport, picked up her suitcase, returned the other one, and apologized. Number 2, Scott was in Panama City, and his connecting flight was delayed. He moved out of the departure area to avoid crowds. He fell asleep and missed his flight. He had to stay in Panama City overnight and catch a flight the next day. Hope your answers are all correct. Now, listen again. Check through the statements you think are probably true. Compare your answers with a partner. Give reasons. Okay? Now try to listen and check, the true ones out here.
Page 100. 2. Things went wrong. B. Listen again. Check the statements you think are probably true. Compare your answers with a partner. Give reasons. 1. Cindy.
You'll probably be surprised to hear what I did. I was on a business trip. The flight was a long one, and when I arrived at my destination, I was eager to get my bags and get to my hotel to relax. Well, you know, they always tell you to be careful to get the right bag, but I was in a hurry. You can guess what happened. My black suitcase looked just like every other one, so I picked up someone else's. I didn't realize my mistake until I got to the hotel. Well, I immediately called the airport, and fortunately, it all worked out. I had to go back to the airport, though, to pick up my suitcase and return the other one. And of course, I also had to apologize. If only I'd checked the name tag more carefully. It's funny. This sort of thing almost never happens to me when I travel.
2. Scott.
This is kind of a funny story. I was in Panama City and had a layover between flights. I'd arrived at about 6 p.m., and my flight out wasn't until about 8:30. Well, my flight was delayed. And delayed. It got really crowded at the departure gate. I was getting tired, and there were so many people around. I hate crowds. So I went to sit away from the departure gate to escape the crowds. I was reading my newspaper and feeling drowsy. I wish I'd slept on the flight to Panama. Anyway, the next thing I know, I wake up, and there's no one around. The crowd is gone. I'd fallen asleep and missed my flight. They must have made lots of announcements, and I missed them all. Boy, did I feel stupid. I had to stay in Panama City overnight and catch a flight out the next morning.
Now please try to read the 4 sentences and try to check whether these sentences are correct or incorrect according to what you have listened to.
Page 100.
Now the answers. This is the end of the session. Hope you have benefited from it. Thank you and see you inshallah. Goodbye.